My name is Alexandra, but you can call me Alex. I'm 33 and I'm a software developer who founded a company fueled by sheer grit and instant noodles. After I sold my startup last year, I quietly acquired a $6 million estate in Vermont that my family has no clue about. I was envisioning a grand Thanksgiving reveal, hosting everyone there until my mother's text message landed. This year, just your sister's family, keeping it small. My only response was a simple enjoy. They were oblivious to the plan I was about to set in motion. Before I get into the whole story, tell me where you're listening from, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt like an outsider in your own family. Back in our suburban home in Boulder, Colorado, my existence was perpetually eclipsed by my older sister, Olivia. Our modest house was a shrine to her achievements, with walls covered in medals and photographs celebrating her every move. Olivia was the daughter my parents had always wanted. She was the prom queen, the captain of the dance team, and she sailed through school with a flawless GPA, all while exuding an effortless charm. I, on the other hand, was the resident weirdo. While Olivia was at football rallies and high school parties, I was holed up in my room, assembling computers from spare parts and writing my first rudimentary lines of code. My parents never really grasped my world. When I'd try to show them my latest project, my dad would offer a polite but vacant smile before steering the conversation back to Olivia. "Your sister got her early acceptance to the University of Colorado," my mom would declare at the dinner table, her face glowing. "And she and Mark have been together for half a year already. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a ring on her finger by the time she graduates." In contrast, my own acceptance into MIT's computer science program, complete with a significant scholarship, was met with a shrug. "Massachusetts is so far," my mother had commented with a frown. "Are you certain you wouldn't be happier staying close by like your sister?" This theme of being a footnote in my own family's story persisted through my college years. During holidays, the entire family's focus was on Olivia and Mark's relationship, their engagement, and eventually their kids. After we both moved out, our childhood bedrooms were repurposed. Olivia's old room was converted into a pristine guest suite that was almost never occupied. Mine? It became a glorified closet, crammed with holiday ornaments and discarded household items. Whenever I'd bring up a breakthrough in my studies or a milestone in my early career, my parents would listen with feigned interest before inevitably pivoting back to Olivia's domestic life. "Did we mention your nephew Leo?" said his first word. My mother would cut in, effectively erasing whatever accomplishment I had just shared. Family events became a test of my endurance. At Olivia's wedding, I wasn't even asked to be a bridesmaid, though she had a party of 8, including distant cousins and friends she hadn't spoken to in years. During Thanksgiving and Christmas, it was my assumed duty to assist in the kitchen while Olivia held court in the living room. One Christmas, I brought my college boyfriend home, and my parents barely acknowledged his presence, while Mark was treated like the son they'd always wished for. Even as my professional life started taking off, my family clung to the narrative of me being the less successful sibling. Well into my late 20s, my father would introduce me as our daughter who's still finding her way, even though I was working for a top tech firm in Boston. Olivia, on the other hand, was proudly presented as our daughter who gave us our wonderful grandchildren and lives just down the road. The exclusion manifested in different ways. Sometimes it was being relegated to the children's table long after I had a master's degree. Other times, it was discovering family parties had happened only after seeing the pictures on social media. "Oh, we didn't think you'd want to make the trip all the way from Boston for a small birthday dinner," my mother would say as an excuse. A particularly sharp memory is from 5 years ago when my grandmother got sick. Olivia was contacted immediately. I found out days later from a cousin. When I confronted my mother, her excuse was, "We didn't want to bother you, you're so busy with your job." I flew back home instantly, only to be treated like a stranger at the hospital, while Olivia was part of every single discussion with the doctors. The relentless invalidation of my achievements and my very being fostered a deep-seated insecurity that I funneled into my work. If my own family couldn't see my worth, I would prove it to myself and to the entire world. I stopped trying to win their approval around my 27th birthday. It was after I overheard my dad telling a family friend he had no idea what I did for a living, but that Olivia had just received a promotion at her local credit union. Letting go of the hope that I would ever be the favorite or even be truly seen by them was a profound release. I poured all my energy into building my career and cultivating a support system of friends who cherished me for who I was. The less I craved my family's validation, the more I flourished. I found a kind of peace with our strained relationship, though the ache never completely vanished. I still made an effort, showing up for major holidays, sending thoughtful presents for birthdays and anniversaries, and making regular check-in calls. I kept the connection alive out of a sense of duty and love, but I did so with the clear understanding that I would never be central to their world in the way Olivia was. This knowledge was both a source of pain and a powerful liberation. My parents never once visited me in Boston despite countless invitations. There was always a reason. It was never a good time, or they insisted it was easier for me to come to Colorado. At the same time, they frequently went on vacations with Olivia, Mark, and the kids. I'd see the photos of their trips to Disneyland and their summer getaways to the mountains splashed across social media. Over time, I crafted a life that I genuinely loved, free from their judgment. I established my own traditions, built a community that celebrated me, and pursued my goals without needing to justify them. The distance that once felt like a sting of rejection became the very space I needed to fully become myself. Little did they know, the daughter they had consistently underestimated was on the verge of creating something extraordinary. My journey to success really began in my freshman dorm at MIT. While other students were busy with posters and string lights, I constructed a command center with a second-hand desk and the computer I'd built from scratch. I was determined to squeeze every drop of value from my education, especially since I was juggling 3 part-time jobs to cover what my scholarship didn't. My days started at 5:30 a.m. at the campus coffee shop. In between my classes, I tutored local high schoolers in physics and coding. My evenings and weekends were spent at the university's IT help desk. Sleep became a distant memory, a luxury I seldom enjoyed. But I was propelled by a clear vision of my future. My roommate Maya would often come back from parties to find me hunched over my keyboard, lost in lines of code. "You're going to burn out, Alex," she'd say, her voice laced with concern. "College is supposed to be fun." But for me, every algorithm I wrote was a brick in the foundation of my independence. Every sleepless night was an investment in a future where their approval was irrelevant. I graduated with high honors, having already created a simple app for organizing student study sessions. It wasn't groundbreaking, but it provided crucial lessons in user-centric design and the practical challenges of software development. My first true foray into the entrepreneurial world happened 2 years after graduation. I had been working at a respectable tech firm, absorbing everything I could about the industry and saving every dollar. With my savings and a small loan from a former professor who saw my potential, I launched a startup aimed at improving communication for remote teams. This was long before remote work was the norm, and my timing was off. After 18 months of relentless work, the venture failed when we ran out of capital. The failure was a gut punch, but it was also an invaluable education. I moved into a cramped San Francisco apartment with 3 roommates to slash my expenses. We lived in a converted living room, partitioned by flimsy bookshelves. I slept on a futon that served as our couch by day. My workspace was a cheap door laid across 2 filing cabinets, but it was all I needed to keep working on new concepts. My breakthrough came with a job at Apex Digital, one of the hottest companies in Silicon Valley. I started in a junior developer role, but quickly made a name for myself by fixing a critical security vulnerability that had been a persistent problem for their main product. Within 2 years, I was leading a team and had earned the notice of the company's top executives. The experience and network I built at Apex Digital were priceless, but the entrepreneurial fire still burned in me. My nights and weekends were dedicated to a new software idea centered on applying artificial intelligence to support small businesses. This time, I was more strategic, conducting thorough market research and pinpointing a specific, underserved need. Once I was confident in the concept, I made the biggest leap of faith of my career. I walked away from my secure, high-paying job to launch Nexus Core, sinking every penny of my savings into the venture. The initial 6 months were an exercise in terror. I downsized to an even tinier apartment, subsisted on a diet of ramen noodles, and routinely worked 16-hour days. There were dark moments when I questioned everything, wondering if I should have stayed at my comfortable corporate job or followed a more traditional path like Olivia. The immense stress began to affect my health. I lost weight, developed chronic insomnia, and fought a constant battle with anxiety. During one particularly low point, I called my parents, hoping for a sliver of emotional support. My father answered, and after I gave him a brief summary of my struggles, he said, "Well, this is what you get for choosing such an unconventional path." Olivia never has these kinds of problems at the credit union. That was the last time I ever tried to share my professional hardships with them. Instead, I relied on my network of friends and mentors. Maya, my college roommate, let me crash on her couch for a month when I had to give up my apartment to make payroll for my small team. My old boss from Apex Digital connected me with potential investors. My MIT professor meticulously reviewed my business plan, offering crucial insights. The tide turned when we secured our first major round of funding, a venture capital firm specializing in I saw the promise in Nexus Core and invested. We expanded from a team of 3 working in my living room to 15 employees in a proper office. The following years were a roller coaster. We weathered a major market downturn that wiped out many of our competitors. We strategically pivoted our product when we identified a more lucrative niche. We successfully fought off a patent lawsuit from a much larger corporation. Through it all, I led with the same fierce determination and resilience I had been cultivating since I was a girl. 7 years after I founded Nexus Core, we had grown to over 100 employees with offices in San Francisco, New York, and London. Our clients included Fortune 500 companies and major government agencies. The nerdy girl who built computers in her bedroom while her sister went to dances was now the CEO of a company valued at over $250 million. When a tech giant came to us with an acquisition offer last year, the decision wasn't simple. Nexus Core was my baby, built from the ground up, but the offer was staggering. $400 million, with the condition that my team and I would continue to lead the division under their corporate umbrella. After the deal closed, I found myself with a level of wealth I had never dreamed of. My first real splurge was a stunning 3-bedroom condo in San Francisco with panoramic views of the bay. After years in tiny shared spaces, having a home that was entirely mine felt like the ultimate luxury. But the purchase that truly brought me joy was the estate in Vermont. I'd always loved the East Coast in the fall, and during a trip the previous year, I fell for a historic property near Manchester. The estate boasted a 7-bedroom main house, a separate guest house, and 50 acres of private land with trails, a pond, and breathtaking mountain views. The second I stepped inside, I knew it was meant to be mine. I bought the property for $6 million and invested another $1 million in renovations, restoring it to perfection. I hired a local estate manager, Samuel, to oversee the property when I wasn't there, which was often, but I visited whenever I could, finding a deep sense of peace in the rolling hills and quiet forests of my new sanctuary. Throughout this entire journey, I kept the details of my success from my family. They knew I had sold my company and was doing well, but I never disclosed the financial specifics. Part of me was waiting for the perfect moment to show, not just tell, them what I had built. Another part was guarding myself against the familiar sting of their dismissal. My plan was to finally unveil everything by hosting Thanksgiving at my Vermont estate. I pictured their astonishment as they drove up to the property, the dawning recognition that the daughter they had written off had achieved something beyond their wildest imaginations. I fantasized about finally earning my father's respect and my mother's pride. Perhaps even Olivia would finally see me as her equal. It wasn't about flaunting my wealth. It was about finally being seen for who I had become, about claiming my place as a successful adult in my own right. That was the dream, until my mother's text message shattered it all. The text came on a Tuesday morning in early November while I was in my San Francisco office, reviewing financial reports. My phone buzzed. It was my mother. I opened it, anticipating the usual pre-holiday coordination. Alex, about Thanksgiving this year. We're keeping it small. Just Olivia, Mark, and the kids. Hope you understand. Maybe we can see you at Christmas instead. I read the words over and over, as if staring at them long enough would change their meaning. There was no real explanation, no apology, just the same casual exclusion that had been the hallmark of our relationship for decades. My fingers hovered over the screen. I could have demanded an explanation. I could have expressed my hurt. I could have pointed out that my flight to Colorado was already booked. But in the end, I typed a single word: enjoy. I put my phone down and tried to return to my work, but the familiar ache of being left out settled in my chest. Despite everything I had built, despite all my accomplishments, I was still the afterthought, the disposable family member who could be cut from the guest list with a quick text. My assistant, Chloe, noticed my mood shift when she brought me my afternoon tea. "Are you all right? You look like you just heard some bad news." I forced a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Just family stuff. The usual." "Want to talk about it?" she offered, closing the office door behind her. I found myself telling her about the text and the long history that led up to it. Chloe listened patiently, her expression growing more and more incredulous. "So you were just gonna fly to Colorado for Thanksgiving, even after they've treated you like this for years?" she asked when I was done. "I always do," I admitted. "Every holiday. I show up with a smile, help with the dishes, listen to stories about my nephews, and pretend it doesn't sting when my parents barely ask about my life. And you were going to surprise them with this incredible Vermont estate after all of that?" I nodded, a wave of foolishness washing over me. I guess a part of me still craved their approval even after all this time. Chloe's expression softened. "That's human. But maybe this is a chance to finally break that cycle." The thought stayed with me for the rest of the day. By the time I was driving home to my condo, a quiet resolve began to replace the hurt. I had spent too long accommodating their dismissal of me. This year, things were going to be different. Back at my condo, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony, watching the city lights twinkle below. On a whim, I called my cousin Megan, my mother's sister's daughter. We'd always been close, despite living on opposite coasts. "Alex, what a great surprise," Megan answered warmly. "I was just thinking about you. Are you coming to Colorado for Thanksgiving? We'd love to see you." "Actually, I was just uninvited," I explained. "Mom texted that they're keeping it small this year, just Olivia's family." There was a short pause. "That's weird." Aunt Judy told my mom the exact same thing last week. She said they were only having immediate family this year. My curiosity was piqued. "So you're not going either?" "Nope, none of us were invited. Mom was actually pretty hurt. We've been going to their house for Thanksgiving for 20 years straight." A few more calls confirmed the pattern. My mother's brother, Uncle David, and his family were told they were taking a break from hosting the extended family. My father's sister, Aunt Carol, was told they were keeping it intimate due to some minor health issues, though no one was actually sick. All in all, over 20 family members who traditionally gathered for Thanksgiving had been cut from the list. The only invitees were Olivia, Mark, and their 3 kids. The discovery made the rejection feel both bigger and smaller at the same time. I wasn't the only one, but the fact that my sister's family was the exclusive guest list still stung. My cousin Ben, Uncle David's son, was especially annoyed. "I already bought my plane tickets," he vented. "Your mom has hosted Thanksgiving my entire life. What are we all supposed to do now?" As he spoke, an idea began to crystallize in my mind. "What if we still get together for Thanksgiving?" I proposed. "Just not at my parents' house." "Where? A restaurant?" Ben asked, skeptical. "Everything will be booked solid by now." "I have a place," I said, the decision solidifying as I spoke. "A house in Vermont. It has plenty of room for everyone. What if I host this year?" There was a moment of stunned silence. "You have a house in Vermont? Since when?" "It's a new thing," I said vaguely. "It's beautiful there this time of year, and there's more than enough space for all of us." Ben's excitement was instantaneous. Over the next hour, I made similar calls to the other excluded family members. To my surprise, almost everyone was on board. My aunts, uncles, and cousins from both sides of the family eagerly agreed to change their plans and come to Vermont. By midnight, I had started a group chat with everyone who had been snubbed by my parents. I sent them photos of the estate for the first time, and my phone lit up with shocked and enthusiastic replies. "Is this really your house?" my cousin Emma texted, followed by a string of emojis. "This looks like a resort," Aunt Carol wrote. "How many bedrooms did you say it has?" Uncle David asked, ever the practical one. As the messages flooded in, I felt a profound shift. The rejection that had felt so sharp just hours before was morphing into an opportunity to build something new. I was no longer the unwanted daughter begging for a seat at the table. I was the host, opening my doors to a group of people who had also been cast aside. The next morning, I expanded the guest list. I invited Maya and other friends who had become my chosen family. I included several of my key employees who had nowhere to go for the holiday. I even reached out to my new neighbors in Vermont. With every yes that came in, a fresh wave of excitement washed over me. The Thanksgiving I had envisioned sharing with my parents was transforming into something far more meaningful, a gathering of people who genuinely wanted to be together. I called Samuel, my estate manager, to go over the new plans. He was taken aback but thrilled. "How many guests should we anticipate, Miss Pierce?" "At least 30, maybe more," I replied. "And please call me Alex." 30 guests, he exclaimed. "We must begin preparations at once. Will you be handling the cuisine yourself, or shall I engage a caterer?" The question stopped me for a second. In Colorado, my job would have been peeling potatoes in my mother's kitchen while Olivia mingled. Here, I could create an entirely different reality. Let's hire the best chef we can find, I decided. I want this to be unforgettable for everyone. As I hung up the phone, I realized I was genuinely smiling for the first time since my mother's text. The painful exclusion had inadvertently created a space for joy, connection, and the chance to define family on my own terms. The next 3 weeks were a blur of planning and coordination. I delegated a significant portion of my work responsibilities to pour my energy into orchestrating the perfect Thanksgiving. This was more than just a holiday. It was a declaration of who I had become and what truly mattered to me. The final guest list settled at 35 people. It included all the family members who had been cut from my parents' celebration, including my Uncle Robert, my father's estranged brother, who had always been kind to me. On a whim, I reached out to my grandmother, Evelyn, my father's mother, assuming she would be with my parents since she lived with them part-time. Beyond blood relatives, I invited the friends who had been my steadfast support system. Maya flew in from Seattle with her husband. 3 of my very first employees from the early startup days of Nexus Core were coming. I even invited my old MIT professor, the one who had given me my first business loan. Every invitation came with first-class flight arrangements for those traveling long distances and luxury car services from the airport to the estate. For guests driving, I provided detailed directions and suggestions for scenic routes through the Vermont countryside. Samuel, my estate manager, was a godsend. He secured the services of Chef Antoine, a culinary artist who had earned a Michelin star in New York, before opening his own exclusive catering business in Vermont. When I explained my vision, a warm, inclusive gathering celebrating both tradition and new beginnings, he was immediately on board. "We will craft a menu that honors the classics but elevates them," he explained during our planning call, "and we'll add a few surprises to represent the unique journey that has brought you all together." I gave him total creative freedom with only one request, that he include my grandmother's beloved sweet potato casserole recipe if she chose to attend. It was the one dish from past Thanksgivings that held nothing but happy memories for me. I put great thought into the guest accommodations. The main house had 7 bedrooms, each with an ensuite bathroom. The guest house provided 3 more. For the remaining guests, I booked rooms at a charming luxury inn just a few minutes down the road. I worked with a local designer to add personalized touches to each room. For Maya, I placed framed photos of us from our college days and her favorite scented candles. For my cousins with young children, I prepared baskets filled with age-appropriate toys and books. For my uncles who appreciated good whiskey, I arranged small selections of local Vermont spirits on their nightstands. The common areas were adorned with elegant Thanksgiving decor. I skipped the kitschy pilgrim figurines my mother favored and opted for natural elements like gourds, pine cones, and autumn foliage, artfully arranged by a local florist. I spent hours on the phone with Samuel, going over every minute detail, from the layout of seating in the great room to the playlist for cocktail hour. We planned activities for everyone, including a kids' craft station, lawn games, and guided hikes on the property's trails. The media room is stocked with classic films for the post-turkey nap, Samuel assured me, and I've arranged for a local guitarist to play during the cocktail reception. I also shopped for meaningful gifts for each guest. For my cousins, I commissioned beautiful leather-bound journals with their initials embossed on the cover. For the children, I ordered custom-made stuffed animals from a local artisan. For my friends and colleagues, I chose books that held a special significance to our shared history. As the RSVPs poured in, all of them confirming attendance, my anticipation grew. This event was becoming a powerful reclamation of the holiday itself. I flew to Vermont a week before Thanksgiving to oversee the final preparations. Seeing the estate fully transformed was breathtaking. Samuel had executed every detail flawlessly. The dining room now featured 2 long tables that could comfortably seat everyone together. The great room was arranged into cozy conversation nooks. The kitchen was a chef's dream, stocked with top-of-the-line equipment for Chef Antoine. "We've also prepared the outdoor spaces," Samuel explained, showing me the stone patio where heaters had been installed. "The fire pit is ready for evening gatherings, and we have plenty of blankets." I had also hired a professional photographer to document the celebration, not just the beautiful setting, but the candid moments of connection. The night before everyone was due to arrive, I stood on the back porch, looking out at the moonlit mountains. The house was filled with the scent of baking bread and simmering stock. Samuel joined me, handing me a mug of hot cider. "Everything is ready, Alex. It's going to be magnificent." I nodded, a mix of emotions swirling within me. I never imagined I'd be doing this, hosting my own Thanksgiving away from my parents. "Family is what we create," he said wisely. "Sometimes the family we choose is just as vital as the one we're born into." As I sipped my cider, I knew he was right. Tomorrow, my home would be filled with people who truly wanted to be there, who saw and valued me for who I was. The quiet, overlooked girl had finally created a space where everyone belonged. Thanksgiving morning arrived with a delicate layer of snow, making the estate look like a scene from a postcard. I was awake before dawn, too excited to sleep, watching the first rays of sun touch the distant peaks. The first to arrive were my Uncle Robert and his wife, Susan, just before 10. I greeted them at the door as Samuel handled their luggage. "Alex," Uncle Robert said, pulling me into a warm hug, "this place, it's breathtaking." As I gave them a tour of the main floor, their expressions of awe filled me with a quiet sense of pride. "Your rooms are upstairs, the blue suite at the end of the hall," I explained. "I thought you'd like the mountain view." "You own all of this?" Susan asked, gesturing toward the vast property visible through the large windows. "I do," I confirmed with a simple nod. "It's been a good couple of years." By noon, cars and shuttles were arriving in a steady stream. My cousins, Ben and Emma, who remembered me as the nerdy girl always messing with computers, were visibly stunned. "When you said you had a place in Vermont, I was picturing a log cabin," Ben admitted as I showed him the high-tech media room. "This is on another level, Alex." Emma hugged me tightly. "I always knew you'd do something incredible," she whispered. "I'm so proud of you." Her words were a balm to old wounds. Here was the validation I had spent a lifetime seeking from my parents, offered freely by a cousin who had been paying attention all along. Maya and her husband arrived from Seattle, bringing Washington wines and artisanal chocolates. "This is beyond even your usual level of overachievement," she teased, taking in the grand foyer. We laughed, remembering our tiny apartment with the broken bathroom door, marveling at how far we had both come. A joyful energy filled the house as relatives who hadn't seen each other in years reconnected. Aunt Carol and Uncle David, who had been feuding since a wedding years ago, were seen chatting warmly in the library. The sound of children's laughter echoed through the halls as they embarked on a scavenger hunt, organized by Samuel. At 2:00, I gathered everyone in the great room for a toast. Standing before the massive stone fireplace, a glass of champagne in hand, I looked out at the faces of the people who had shaped my life. "Thank you all for being here today," I began, my voice steady. "Some of us have known each other our entire lives. Others are newer friends who have become family. What matters is that everyone here chose to be here, to create something new together." I didn't mention my parents or the reason for this alternative gathering. Instead, I focused on gratitude. Today is about appreciating the bonds we share and the new traditions we're building. I am so honored to welcome you to my home. As glasses were raised, the front door opened unexpectedly. Samuel went to investigate and returned a moment later, looking surprised. "Miss Pierce, your grandmother is here." A hush fell over the room as my grandmother, Evelyn, entered, assisted by her caregiver. At 87, she moved with a slow, deliberate grace. I set my glass down and rushed to embrace her. "Grandma, I didn't think you'd be able to make it." She patted my hand. "Did you really think I'd miss my favorite granddaughter's first Thanksgiving as a host?" "When I heard what you were doing, I told your father I had a terrible headache. Then my caregiver helped me arrange a car." Her eyes twinkled with mischief. "Sometimes, at my age, you have to be a little deceitful to get what you want." Her arrival injected a fresh wave of joy into the gathering. She held court by the fire, sharing family stories that many of us had never heard. At 4:00, we moved to the dining room. The tables were set with fine china and crystal, each place marked with a handwritten name card. Chef Antoine presented each course, explaining the local ingredients and preparation. The conversation was lively and genuine, a stark contrast to the tense, obligatory Thanksgivings of my past. There was no hierarchy here, no favoritism. After dinner, as dusk settled, we gathered on the heated patio around the fire pit. The photographer captured candid moments of guests wrapped in blankets, sharing stories and laughter. My old professor raised his glass. To Alex, who has always seen potential where others saw problems, "You've built something truly special here." Later, someone suggested we share what we were thankful for. When it was my grandmother's turn, she looked directly at me. "I'm thankful for brave women who forge their own paths when the well-trodden road doesn't suit them, and I'm so thankful I'm here to see it." Later that night, alone with my grandmother, she said, "I am so proud of what you've built, Alex, not just this house, but this life." "Thank you for coming, Grandma," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "It means the world to me." She squeezed my hand. "Your parents and Olivia have no idea what they're missing, but I have a feeling they're about to find out." I raised an eyebrow. My grandmother smiled. "Emma has been posting photos all day. Your cousin Patrick has been live streaming. In this day and age, a celebration this grand doesn't stay secret for long." She was right. All day, my guests had been sharing photos and videos with captions like, "Best Thanksgiving ever," and "Who needs Colorado when you have Vermont?" That night, after everyone had retired, I sat alone in the quiet library. I scrolled through some of the photos. They were beautiful, capturing the setting, the food, and the genuine joy on everyone's faces. Just as I was about to put my phone away, a notification popped up. It was a text from Olivia. "Nice house. Didn't know you were so loaded. Mom and Dad are freaking out." I smiled to myself, switched off my phone, and went to bed. I slept soundly in the home I had built, surrounded by the family I had chosen. The day after Thanksgiving, my phone started buzzing incessantly with calls and texts from my mother, father, and Olivia. I silenced it, determined to focus on my guests. This weekend was about new traditions, not old drama. By mid-afternoon, I had 15 missed calls and nearly 30 text messages. In the quiet of the library, I finally opened them. They ranged from confused to furious. My mother demanded an explanation. My father expressed bewilderment. Olivia's texts were sharp, accusing me of showing off. The latest from my mother read, "We need to talk. Call me immediately." I took a deep breath and called her, putting the phone on speaker. She answered instantly. "Alex, finally, what is going on? Why are there pictures all over social media of you hosting Thanksgiving at some mansion? And why is your grandmother there?" Her voice had that familiar, accusatory edge. But this time, I felt calm. "Hello, Mom." "Yes, I hosted Thanksgiving at my home in Vermont. I invited family members who didn't have plans after you decided to only have Olivia's family over. But this was supposed to be a small, quiet Thanksgiving," she stammered. "For Olivia's immediate family," I corrected gently. "Not mine, or Uncle David's, or Aunt Carol's. So we made our own gathering." There was a pause. "You should have told us you bought a house, and such an expensive one. Where did you get that kind of money?" The question revealed just how little they knew. "Mom, I sold my company last year for $400 million. I mentioned it at Christmas, but you and Dad were busy with the kids." Another longer silence. I could almost hear her recalibrating. "Your father wants to talk to you," she said, and the phone was passed. "Alex," my father's voice was strained. "What is this? Are you trying to make some kind of point, taking the family away from our Thanksgiving?" "No, Dad. When Mom texted that I wasn't welcome, I made other plans. It turned out a lot of the family received similar messages, so I invited them to join me. It was a wonderful celebration." "Not welcome? That's not what we meant. We were just trying to keep it small. Olivia's been stressed. A quiet holiday for 7 people, just not me," I pointed out evenly. "Dad, this has been the pattern my entire life." "That's ridiculous," he protested. "We've always treated you and Olivia the same." I could have listed countless examples, but I knew it was pointless. I think we remember my childhood differently. But what matters now is that I'm living my life on my own terms. I'm not looking for an apology. Suddenly, Olivia's voice broke in. I was on speakerphone. "But why did you have to plaster it all over the internet? Everyone is talking about your amazing house. It makes our Thanksgiving look pathetic." There it was. The real issue wasn't my exclusion, but my refusal to be diminished by it. "I didn't post any photos, Olivia. Our cousins and friends did because they had a great time." "But you invited Grandma," she accused. "She lied to us to be with you." I smiled, remembering my grandmother's escape plan. Grandma is an adult. Maybe she was curious why half the family was gathering in Vermont. You'd have to ask her. As if on cue, my grandmother entered the library. "Is that my son and his family?" "Put them on speaker, Alex. I have something to say." I adjusted the volume. "Robert, Judy, Olivia, this is Evelyn. I want you to listen. What you did is exactly why I chose to be here. This family has taken this child for granted for far too long, always putting her second. I've watched it for years, and I'm guilty for not speaking up sooner." Her voice was firm. "Alex has built an extraordinary life through her own hard work. She has a brilliant career, a beautiful home, and the generosity to share it. Instead of being jealous or defensive, you should be proud." "I certainly am." Stunned silence came from the phone. Tears welled in my eyes. Finally, my father spoke, his voice subdued. "Mom, I think you're exaggerating. Love isn't just words, Robert. It's attention. It's interest. It's making space. By that measure, you and Judy have failed Alex repeatedly." "That's not fair," my mother's voice cracked. "When was the last time you visited Alex in Boston?" my grandmother challenged. "When did you last ask about her life and mean it? When did you ever put her first?" The silence was the only answer needed. "I'm staying in Vermont through the weekend," she continued. "When I return, we will have a family discussion about how things are going to change. For now, I suggest you reflect on your choices." With that, she nodded for me to end the call. The library was quiet. "You didn't have to do that, Grandma," I said softly. "Yes, I did. It was long overdue." She smiled. "Now, I believe some of your guests were planning a hike. I think I'll sit by the fire with a good book." I helped her get settled before rejoining my guests, feeling lighter than I had in years. That evening, another text came from Olivia. "I've always been jealous of you, Alex. Your freedom, your brilliance. I took comfort in being the favorite because it was the one thing I had over you. I'm sorry for my part in all this. Congratulations on everything. You deserve it." I read it twice, shocked. Before I could reply, another came from my father. "Your grandmother is right. We haven't been fair to you. I never realized how successful you'd become because I never really asked. I'm proud of you, Alex." And finally, from my mother, "The house looks beautiful. Perhaps we could visit sometime and see it in person." I set the phone down. The path to healing would be long, but this was a start. I rejoined my guests where laughter and conversation flowed. Whatever came next, I had created something real here, a new definition of family built on respect and genuine connection, and that felt like the greatest Thanksgiving gift of all. As November turned to December, my Vermont estate grew quiet again. I returned to San Francisco, but my mind was on Christmas and the fragile new state of my family. The communication with my parents and Olivia was cautious but consistent. My grandmother had, as promised, facilitated a family meeting. Truths were spoken, tears were shed, she reported. Whether it sticks remains to be seen, but awareness is the first step. Guided by her wisdom, I sent an email to my parents and Olivia, inviting them to spend Christmas in Vermont. "This isn't about erasing the past," I wrote. "It's about the possibility of something new." They accepted within hours. On December 23rd, I watched them arrive, their faces filled with awe. Brad and the kids had stayed in Colorado, making this a gathering of just the four of us. "Welcome to my home," I said, leading them into the great room where a massive Christmas tree stood. "You live here alone?" my father asked. I explained about Samuel and the staff. "It's like something from a magazine," Catherine murmured. As I gave them a tour, I watched their perception of me visibly shift. In my home office, my father paused before framed magazine covers featuring my company. "Forbes 30 Under 30, he read aloud. "Why did you never tell us about this?" "I tried, Dad," I said softly, "many times, but you were always busy." He nodded, the painful truth hanging in the air. "I'm sorry we didn't listen." Dinner that night was initially stilted, but as we talked, the tension eased. For the first time, my mother asked about my work with genuine interest. Catherine spoke openly about her own insecurities. "When you left for MIT, I was terrified," she admitted. "I knew you were smarter, more driven. I was afraid you'd outshine me, So I held on tight to being the favorite. We failed you both, my mother said quietly. We put too much pressure on you, Catherine. And Alex, we didn't give you the recognition you deserved. I see that now. The conversation went late into the night, a mix of difficult truths and rediscovered positive memories. It wasn't a cure, but it was a beginning. On Christmas morning, the gifts they gave me were thoughtful, chosen for me, not just out of obligation. My mother raised her glass at dinner. To new beginnings, she said, her eyes meeting mine, and to our remarkable daughter, Alex, who had the courage to create her own path and then invite us to walk it with her. The simple acknowledgement brought tears to my eyes. It was all I had ever wanted. As they left a few days later, my father hugged me tightly. I'm so proud of what you've built, he said, not just this house, but this life. I stood in the doorway as their car disappeared, reflecting on the journey. What began with painful exclusion had led to a profound shift. I had learned that true belonging doesn't come from being invited to someone else's table, but from building your own and welcoming those who value you. As the new year approached, I felt a deep sense of peace. The pain of being the afterthought had forged the strength to define my own family, my own traditions, and my own happiness. Have you ever had to create your own sense of belonging when you felt excluded by family or friends? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe to share more journeys of personal growth and family dynamics. Thank you for being part of this community where we can share our truths and support one another.